Hello. I feel a call to talk about the experiences I lived. During several Ayahuasca ceremonies. They live inside of me, and I feel they have value. And I wish to hold them. For a longer period of time than I believe my memory will naturally hold them. So I speak. In my first Ayahuasca ceremony, I lay down and relaxed and was just present, listening. At some moment I do not have a continuous stream of consciousness from before and after, but I was laying down, seeing darkness with my eyes closed, and the next moment I had a feeling of terror simultaneous with vividness, intensity, energy, and I felt an image in front of me. Where a being a fluid delineated in space, but fluid and edgy and smooth and curved and of an overwhelming amount of detailed intricacy in its shape and in its colors and in the fluidity with which it moved and with all the colors flowing through it. It was sculpting. This being was sculpting. This being was here, and it had a shape, and it seemed somewhat like a dragon of sorts, and it was sculpting this other shape that was here on this side. And this shape was somewhat similar to this being, this dragon, but it felt like it was this being who was sculpting this other figure, even though it was not obvious. Because they were very similar. This one too had shapes and details and intricacy and corners and spikes and edges and roundedness and insides and outsides. Amazing intricacy of shapes. But so this one was, the being was sculpting this, and it seemed that as it was sculpting it, as it was somewhat lasering it with its colors, with its energy, it was also giving of itself. It was using its own matter, its own substance to sculpt the other one, in a sense. In some way, it was like the colors or the shapes or the quality was being transferred from one to another, just continuously. And myself, I was overwhelmed and could not understand anything. I thought, what is this? And why does it feel so Because there was intense energy that I felt. I felt it in me, in my consciousness. As the being sculpted. It felt somewhat autonomous / mechanical. Like it was a worker that was sculpting something. But I could tell that it had life. It was a life sculpting, apparently also life. It was something living sculpting something else. And in this shape, in this amazing 3D-ness of these figures that were almost dancing with each other at the focus of sculpting when it went from top to bottom, it seems. It was a stupendous view. It left me literally stupefied. And truly a feeling of terror, as in somewhat inside of me, the signal for a really high scream was sounding in my mind. That feeling that comes up. Not the scream itself, just the feeling of almost screeching something. And yet there was nothing horrendous going on in front of me, just these colors and vividness and intricacy of detail. And it felt as if someone had taken my head, taken my head, pointed me in a direction, and just like was holding me there. Just, oh my. There. Like it was just holding me there, like and yet I knew I wanted to see it, because I wanted to see what was true. What is this? And so I just saw this, looked at it with this grasping thought, attempting to understand anything about it. And then at some point it was like that I was moved around to just see what was around, and I realized that this was not the only one. It was not the only being that was being sculpted or sculpting. I was somehow giving a zoom out of everything, and I saw columns and 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 columns extending out apparently infinitely into space. All around us there were these columns of colors, intricate shapes, seemingly going from top to bottom, and all of them being sculpted by all these beings continuously. It truly felt like it was an unending task. And as I saw these columns out, and I looked into the void that was out into infinity, but yet filled with columns, and all these beings working, and me trying to understand what was going on. I had the impression that this was reality being sculpted at every moment. At every moment. It was just how it was. Just how it was, or how it was even presented to me. And all these colors and all these shapes, and I was out in space. I was having space. A part of me was like wanting to go back to safety, but I felt like internally I had my eyes open. Internally I was like, okay, this is very strange, but I want to see it. And so I just kept seeing it. And at some moment, I don't remember how it happened, it felt like my mind, like my very mind, the very thing that was processing all these thoughts and all these impressions and all these maybe this, maybe that, what is this, me, you, what is this? It got swept in. It got swept into that flow, into that stream of, into the stream of colors that was happening somewhere. the stream of colors and shapes, and I was just swept inside. And I felt like I began going like down a slope, and up, and then up, go outside, and then up, and then up. I began going a roller coaster, just absolute roller coaster, up, down, up. I could not. I had no concrete thought. My mind was going. My mind was literally in my experience, tumbling all down these paths, roads, and my sense of self was not as I knew it. Everything just began to either reality would outstretch into everything, or it would collapse into itself, or time itself would, the now would like collapse into the other moment, and then I would just know exactly what was the future holding for me, or at least I thought so. And I began to feel fear of, oh my God, I'm losing myself. That seems to be the worst thing that can happen. No. How can I regain myself? How can I ever regain myself if I don't have myself to regain myself? And so a fear of loss, a fear of absolute loss just invaded me. And I just began to go up and down, and all of the roller coasters of reality somewhere. And it felt like rainbows, it felt like colors, it felt like shapes going this way and that way. Somewhat smooth, but and somewhat how could I have recollection, still some thoughts of those times? I'm not sure. My mind was warped. But it did. I had some perception. And around this time, I remember my body feeling, oh, I want to go to the bathroom. I want to pee. And then I realized, oh, I guess I can't. I guess I do have perception and control of my body still. Okay, so what do? Okay, I guess I go to the bathroom right there. At the same time, this time thing was warping into myself. I'm not sure who I was, or where my intention was, or what my thoughts were. I didn't know. And yet I knew that I can pee. I can. I just do what I know to do. I know where the bathroom is. I know. I know I have this feeling of my body. I can. I just do it. Okay. And then I got into it and began to take a hold of my body again, and began to move around and go inside and go up the stairs and open the door and close the door. But my field of vision was, I think I intentionally was trying to close my eyes because I wanted to experience this thing that was happening. Because it felt true. It felt real, like new information. So I kept going, and I went to the bathroom, and I peed, and all this time I still felt this roller coastery feeling. And then I remember I was going back, and I was thinking, how am I not bumping it into everything? How am I not just an absolute mess. But I was able to. My body was responsive and was self-sufficient. I just needed to tell it the basics, and it seemed to take care of the rest. And so I went back to my mattress, and no, I didn't rest. I didn't know what I was doing. I went back to my mattress, and I remember being like this, and I was afraid, and I realized, oh my god, did I just fall into an abyss of psychedelics, and I will never get out of it? And am I addicted for life, and was this my state forever? Forever? Because it truly felt like forever was just right here, and I imagined myself just like in the corner of streets, and putting all of my efforts, putting all of my energy into just simply trying to get the next ayahuasca hit. In my mind, I had become a complete disaster in life, an addict. And I had I imagined myself losing absolute control of my life. And I was very, very afraid. I remember later on, people told me that I looked like I was doing this in a corner somewhere. I had vague recollections of it. I just knew that I was experiencing fear, and I was deep into feelings of it. And living my imagination, what I thought was the worst case scenario. Out of participating in an ayahuasca ceremony. At some point, the roller coastering seemed to subside somewhat, to not be so moving, so fast, so ungraspable for me. And at some point it felt like like my mind, whatever was on this ride, like bumped into something, apparently into one of these columns, or something of that sort. Because it was also colorful, and it seemed to be like somewhat like what appears in science fiction with these interdimensional portals, like a door, a portal in the void, through the void, made out of contours of colors, somewhat. But this door was the column at the same time. Something like that. And so I kind of like bumped into this column, and it felt like ground. It felt like, oh, oh, ground. I'm back. I don't know. I'm not back, but I'm like I'm ground. It felt like I had somewhat more stability in my thoughts, and it felt like, oh, okay. I guess I'm somewhat stable now. All right. And then it felt like, oh, okay, there's these doors, and now I'm just going to like, oh, I guess I'm going in. I guess I'm going, yeah. And I began to like to go down the column, go down this portal. And I realized that I realized midway that I was descending back into my body. And as I was descending down, I thought, is this what being born feels like? Because I have this vague recollection of this happening already. And I just was going down, 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 and it felt controlled, it felt gentle. It wasn't like, ah! It was like, and at some point I was back in my body. And I realized it is just exactly as when one is being born. All my senses, my perceptions were fresh, were imbued with intense life. Intense. That it could be to the point of intolerability. It was like, everything was here. And I felt my hands on the floor, however they were, and my head resting on the floor or the mattress somewhere. And slowly, very slowly, I began to gently move a little bit, just like the slightest movement. And I felt a voice or an intention or an entity. I felt a message of some kind coming into me saying, relax, just relax, just relax. And I somewhat remember that was an advice I had already been given in a similar situation. Just relax. And so I did that. I did just that. I realized, oh, this is asking me to relax, to truly relax, to truly give him everything. Just everything. And in this video I give up everything except my core muscles that are keeping me up. But I will go the other side to truly relax. And I could tell that this voice, this message was referring not just to my body, but to everything I manage. My emotions as well, this fear and excitement and the other emotions really just relax.
And all the thoughts of trying to understand what was going on, or to try to fit perceptions to a certain model. It's just, I was being asked to just relax. Even the breath now would have been so unrelaxed. But no, there was just nothing to do. Nothing to do or not to do. I understood the purpose of this message, the purpose of this advice, recommendation, that my body be able to adjust itself correctly to my entry. So that the merging, the meeting of the energies could be allowed. Not forcefully, but merely allowed. And I felt that I remembered that I had felt this before. The same situation. But in that last situation, I could not relax. I was not able to. Partly because there were signals, influences around me. A mother, a doctor, hospitals, sounds, perhaps. I don't remember any details. It's not like I recollected, like I remember the moment of my birth. But I recognized that my intent of just relaxing and being unable to, because I was pulled by other things, the signals, things trying to make me react and trying to get my attention and trying to trying to force me to be part of the world without me having really integrated into my body. And I felt a sadness, a self-pity even of, you were not able to truly relax when you came into this world. You weren't given the opportunity. You began being pulled since the very moment you arrived. And there was sadness and some anger but I relaxed. But I relaxed and I just allowed the things to move, the things to feel, and the energies to blend, integrate, somehow. I just lay there and listened. I listened to what my body was telling me.
did it have any special things to say? I focused on my body, and basically I exchanged a conversation of, hello, hi, body, you're going to be my body. I'm glad I have you as a body. I'm very glad to be here. I'm not twirling and warping around like I was before. I am... I have a ground. I have a ground. I felt gratitude for having a ground. Oh my god, I'm grounded. And so I just began conversing with my body, little by little. Oh, what do you feel? Are there any points you want me to feel? How's the leg? Oh, yeah, there's the leg. What shape does it have? Ah, alright. Uh-huh. Yeah, I see it. How about the other one? Ah, uh-huh. Similar. Yeah. Anything that you don't like? Oh, yeah, that feels uncomfortable, right? A little bit. How about we just like shift it a little bit, right? Okay, no, slow. I'll be slow. Don't worry. I'll be very, very slow. I'm not going to do a single thing without telling you first, okay? I know you're tender. I am very tender as well. We are both very tender, so let's take this slowly, okay? And just tiny shifts, all of them, each of them, felt with the most minutious detail I could manage, my consciousness could manage. Every single thing being a together task. It was not me to ride or say, hey, do that, move over there. Rather, hey, I see you, I feel you, you're not my property. Or at least you're not only my property, you have your own life. You have your own life, you have your own consciousness. And if we're going to be in this together, let's collaborate. So that neither of us is left behind in the decision-making process. But rather both of us be able to find a harmony between us that allows us to function effectively and joyfully, both of us. And I realized this requires consent. It requires complete mutual consent. Can we try to find that? Can we cultivate
communication, an understanding between us, so that we become truly a team. And for the rest of the ceremony, I communed with my body and conversed with it. I scanned through my body. I regained a sensory connection with all of the parts and pieces within me. And I regained a channel of communication so that actions would be not anymore as much as possible, not orders, not commands coming from someone who believes that it should be done and it should be done in this way, and if it's not done in this way, it's incorrect. But rather to be able to be a considerate rider that knows and understands the qualities, the abilities, and the limitations of this body I have, of this wonderful body that I have. We communed. And it felt wonderful. So the ceremony ended, and as people spoke around me, I continued in continuous communication with my body, because it was delightful. There was pleasure. There can be pleasure in the communication that we have with our bodies. Pleasure and camaraderie. Yeah, that thing that just happened. Yeah, that was good, right? Yeah, that was good. Good job. Thanks. You too. Yeah. Camaraderie. And pleasure in feeling, pleasure in perceiving, and having this complete model of the body stretched out, open in one's consciousness. And then I was offered some soup, vegetable soup. And so I was given this bowl of soup. I remember it being yellow, and the bowl perhaps gray or cream white. And the
warmth in my hands had such a renewed vitality inside of it. Right? That's what I felt like. Oh, there's worms in the bowl. And then I went in to smell it. And the warm fumes of the soup with all the spices and the humidity and the flavors all woven together into these transparent fumes of steam. It was pleasure and delight. Love. Love. Soup. And I tasted it. And I could continue describing each minute detail of all the things I felt. It was all pleasure. It all felt filled with life. I ate a few spoonfuls. And at each spoonful, I communed with my body and asked it, oh, hey, do you want more? As in, it was no longer me just ordering, okay, let's eat the soup. I realized, oh, it's the body who's going to process this. Body, do you want some more? And in the beginning I said, oh yes, give me soup. But then, 2 or 3 spoonfuls later, my body began feeling, I'm not sure. And it just felt like lying down again. So I placed my soup, bowl of soup on the floor. And lay down again. Lay down like laying down with my entire body on the floor. It's somewhat like this. And the posture began slowly to bring back memories of crying, of sadness, of despair. And gradually I began to feel emotions that I held within me. These emotions of sadness, emotions of resentment, emotions of anger, emotions of helplessness. And I believe they began coming out by being connected to the fact that at the moment of my birth, I was not given the opportunity to truly
integrate into my body. I was not given that chance. I began to be pulled around, and I don't know what exactly. But I was not allowed to just be. And part of me was so angry and so sad and so resentful about it. So resentful. And all of these emotions began to slowly rising out from somewhere out here in my abdomen, but just also they all began to rise and churn within me. And I realized, this is also what my body holds. My emotional body, it holds this. I am in a stage of relaxing. I am new in my body. Can I perhaps now that I am physically self-reliant, can I now give myself the opportunity to truly relax into all of those tensions inside of me, tensions. Can I allow them to be? Can I allow them to say what they want to say? Because I realized when I feel these emotions, I very often, especially years ago, I repressed them. I suppressed them, I did not listen to them. And when I did not listen to them, they could not say what they wanted to say. They couldn't. They tried, and they were knocking and giving me the emotions that, hey, I have something to say, and I didn't allow them because it wasn't okay to cry. Because it wasn't okay to be sad, because this is what you have to do, because of so many things that happen in life. Because others shove us, because others abuse us, bully us, mock us, hurt us. Perhaps unknowingly, but they do. And I just allowed my body. I realized I'm just going to allow. And my body began to cry. And I began to cry. And just cry. Whatever it wanted to do. I just gave it space. And I cried. I'm not going to continue crying in this video because I actually want to speak. But I cried. I truly said I did not cry. I listened and saw as my body, as my emotions cried, as they began feeling the hurts they had experienced in life, as they began to voice their complaints one by one,
one by one, all of those complaints, of those hurts that they were angry at other people, or angry at the circumstances, or hurt by what this person did, or hurt by this abandonment I felt, or angry at that, or sad at that, or despair at that. And not just the things about childhood. There were many in childhood, but also through adolescence, and also through adulthood, and also even in the last 3 years, and specific instances of things. And I could feel how one emotion from the very source, like something I felt when I was 3 or 4 years old, was the same emotion that came again when I was 9. It was the same emotion that came again when I was 13, when I was 16, when I was 21, when I was 26, again and again and again. And so even as I listened, I realized, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. I feel it. I will feel it with you. Me as the soul, as the observer, I could be there and say, I am here. I feel what you are feeling, and I am listening. And you are not being suppressed or repressed. You can say absolutely whatever you want. Absolutely whatever you want. little by little, my emotion just felt encouraged. They truly felt, oh, is it really, can I really say what I want to say? Okay, yeah, I guess I want to say. And my cries began getting more rawer, sometimes louder, sometimes softer. But anything. It was the expression they had, what they really were, what they truly were. They were just giving space. They cried and they cried and they cried and they cried and they cried, and sometimes little by little my body starts feeling like it's just being tantrums, moving my hands over my head, hitting things in my legs, hitting the ground, just everything. People around me going ask me, what's going on? Are you okay? And I was clear. I was so clear. I felt so clear that this is what I'm doing now. And they asked me, and I told them, yes, I'm exactly fine. Please, I do not need help now. And I allowed myself to continue crying. Just whatever I wanted to do. I did not suppress and I did not exaggerate. Simply, the same principles of relaxation. When there's absolute relaxation, it doesn't mean that there are no tensions. There's whatever is inside. But if there's complete relaxation, the tensions are allowed to spring. They're allowed to express. And yet I felt relaxed and clear in my center, in myself. That I was the observer. That it was to me that all of these expressions were directed. They didn't need to go and be said and be shouted or be complained out into any other person in the world. None. All of those expressions, all of those emotions were for me. And it required attention. It required absolute focus. acknowledge that this is where the energy is. This is where the interaction is happening. This is where the importance occurs. And when the emotions and when the mind felt like going to other people or to blame others, I was just absolutely certain that we are not blaming anyone. We are not blaming anyone. This is me. And only I have the power to observe this, to feel this, and to complete the circuit. The circuit of all these emotions, all of these tensions within me wanting to voice their being. And there being a listener, an observer, that sees it and feels it for exactly what it is. For only oneself can do it. And so I allowed complaint by complaint, hurt after hurt, sadness after sadness, pride after pride, pride after pride that covered, that veiled the hurts and the fears that lay within. All of them, they began to voice their expression. They began to say, "Oh, but yes, I hurt, but I did this." And then why are you saying? Why? Where does this justification come from? Where do all these excuses come from? And once each tension had been spoken, had been said, had been felt, and I had felt the sadness and the hurt and the fear that still resided within, when that circuit had been completed, when it had been observed, the tension could fade. It was said. It was done. Its message had been transmitted. The observer was no longer hiding from it, was no longer trying to suppress it, was no longer trying to ignore it. It listened. And I could feel all of those resistances, all of those tensions slowly, one by one, just choo, 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 choo. Release. To release. Because there was no longer a need for them to continue. Their message had been given. Their message had been communicated. And it was up for me up to me, the observer, to choose what to do with it. I cried. My body cried. however I call it. Cries, croaks, whines, tears, snot, drool, tantrum. My body truly had all of these tensions built within it to express itself exactly as a child would, exactly. Like hands going onto the floor and feet flashing onto the ground. My head is turned. And all of them were heard, were seen, were felt. And all of them gradually dissolved. Sometimes they came back. Sometimes it would say what it had to say, and then it would go. Then other complaints would go along, and then that same other emotion, that first one, would complain again about a similar instance that had triggered it, that had triggered that hurt. And it had something else to say, and I listened to it again. And if it had other tears to shed, I allowed. If it had more snot to shed, I allowed. If it had more tantrum to express, to hit, if it had shouts, if it had anything. They had space. Further than the emotions, it felt that even the mind held such hurts inside. I don't know if it was actually the mind, but it truly felt mental. It truly felt that many of my thoughts and justifications or excuses or reasons for doing things, they were sometimes geared in a particular manner that was meant to tend to one of my emotions, one of my hurt emotions. Because I searched. Because I realized what was happening. I realized the importance of what was happening. And I began to search across my life. Okay, you said this. Okay, you said this. Oh, okay, that hurt. Okay. What else is there in life that I can give voice to? What else is there stuck in my being that wants to be given a voice, that wants a stage, that wants to express what it has not been able to so far? And I sought and I sought and I sought and I sought and I sought, experience after experience, moment after moment after moment after moment. And love. With love for this being, this my being that supports me, that grounds me, that enables me in this world. With love. With this new understanding of how important it was that it could express, I searched across my body, I searched across my memories, I searched across my justifications and excuses. And as people around me began to say, hey, are you sure you're okay? Do you want something? And I continued to very clearly say, I do not need help. Please allow me to just stay here. Will you not go to sleep? No, please allow me to stay here. I know I thank you, but no. My mind, it seemed, or my thoughts at least, would also trigger, would also activate other hurt parts of myself, or other parts of myself that I felt were stuck. And one of them was exasperation. Exasperation with people around me who ask me things and who think that I don't know what I'm doing, who think that I need that I need to be taken care of beyond what I truly can do, beyond my own capabilities. Exasperation with these people. Why are they doing this to me? Don't they know that I am capable? And beneath this exasperation, there was a pride. A pride of, oh, these people. I feel I am better than these people. And beneath the pride, emotions. Beneath the pride, band-aids or disguises for the hurts that I had felt in life. And I mention my mind because it was particularly unsatisfied. It was particularly unsatisfied with what I heard. Like, oh, do you think that you're just going to find all your memories and all your hurts, and suddenly everything's released and everything's going to be cured? Do you think it's that easy? Like, there was a voices inside of me that they were clinging on. To my victimhood. They were, in a sense, the guardians of my victimhood, saying, no, this is my identity. How dare you try to remove my identity from me? Although not in those words, but looking for excuses and for justifications. Like, oh, do you think that's that easy? Do you think that really solves all of those intense hurts that you have felt in your life? Do you think that's all this? Do you think that's all that? Do you think that just going to be lying on the floor a little while and starting crying and just allowing it's going to solve everything? And the observer observed. Within. It just saw, inspected. It inquired into these expressions. I was like, oh, what is your drive? What is your motive? You're speaking angrily. That comes, I know, usually from hurt. Or where is that hurt? Or you are angry about something. What is wrong that you want to change? With clarity. With knowledge. That truly there is nothing else in the world that could help bring peace to my being. If not within myself. And these thoughts were persistent. And they made more tantrums. And I hit my feet and legs on the floor, on the ground, over and over and over again. And I was asked to quiet down because other people could not sleep. And I knew that it was up to me to give myself the importance that I required in that moment. I lay and observed until dawn. And I recall that just as my body and I agreed to open my eyes, our eyes, I could see the pale light blue from the dawning sky coming through the window. And I felt it correspond to how I was waking up. In a body cleaned, in a body flushed. In a body that was now my friend. And not my slave. And for hours and hours after, I said not a word. As much as I was able. Because my attention and my communication was directed inwards. And it was blossoming. A new relationship. That needed taking care of. And our communication was bursting. It was bursting with things to say, to tell each other, to explore. To explore, to ask and feel, oh, I want to feel to take that step. Bonnie, are you okay? Do you want to do this? Are you sure? Are we good? Want to go over there? Oh, you want to go over there? Oh, okay. And then magic within us if we listen. Thus,